to fall to the floor.
Welcome back to another pen talk. This pen talk has been a long time in the making. I originally did a couple cuts of this back in January, and I was focused then on what I felt were bargains on eBay for the Delta Federico pens from Marte Modena. They're gone, so this video is more of a historical look back. And I was fortunate enough to pick up these 4 Federicos. 2 of them I've done reviews on. This is Hell's Bells, and this is the oversized one. Since then I picked up 2 more in December and January. Here's the tortoise one, which I just wanted a tortoise one, and that was also Buy It Now. That was the less expensive of these 4 pens. And then I really love the Hell's Bells red resin, so I was able to pick up another one with a different color combination, and that one has an 18 karat nib. So we have a steel nib, 14 karat, 18, and 14. From my perspective, certain of viewers that have watched some of my previous videos, I think Deltas are an exceptionally great writing instrument in many levels. Obviously, the nibs and the writing experience are excellent. And I really love their design, the quality of manufacture, the materials that they use, consistency. So those are the ways that I look at things, and I try to add to a collection in a way that enhances my appreciation for the subject, in this case Deltas. I've experimented with a few other ones. My first one with the Fusion 82 had a Fusion nib in it. I got it at a very good price and was blown away by the design, the materials. Again, the same type of characteristics that I use to associate with a good pen, a pen that I like to write with on a daily basis. Enjoy filling it with different types of inks. I got a nice sunlight coming in, so it really shows off the resin. And to me, this is the best example from my perspective of the great combination of colors and materials and design of the 4 of these. It also has one of the best nibs. This is the 14 karat fine. It writes beautifully, consistently all the time. I didn't fall in love with the pen when I first got it, but I learned to enjoy it over time. As I mentioned, this was the least expensive one of the group, and I have to admit, from an aesthetic viewpoint, it's the least interesting. It's certainly well made, and I love the colors, but it doesn't compare to the resins that are in the other pens. I just thought these would be nice to compare. Again, we have very consistent in all their designs. Here we have the classic Dolce Vita orange resin, which has probably been used in 10,000 or 20,000 pens. And the red Hell's Bells, which I think holds its own with the orange resin. The other thing I think would be good to do is compare these against a more classic Dolce Vita. I've done this a little bit in my other comparisons, but one of the main differences is the center band. This here is the completely orange one, which I really love. It has a Fusion nib on it, which writes beautifully. But this center band is a cast sterling silver with a gold wash on it, so that's kind of vermeil. And this one has a stainless steel band, which is also plated with gold. Again, the consistencies are excellent. The resin is just beautiful. So one of the main differences between normal Dolce Vita and a Federico is the Federico has this blind cap, which reveals the capture converter pistons, so you don't have to take the pen apart. And I don't think that's a really added feature. I've used it on occasion, but most of the time I unscrew it because I want to see what ink is left in the converter. And there's no windows on these like there are in some of the other Federicos, so there's no way to observe the level of ink. I have one Dolce Vita, which is the black and orange version, but it's a Zen model. I wanted something a little different. I'm really don't get interested in just buying a pen that everybody else has. So again, you can see the difference with the cast sterling cap here at the ring at the bottom of the cap. Again, the classic orange resin. Consistently good in every pen that I have it in. This one's a little bit shorter, but not much. Not the same length, but what you'll find when you open these up is the sections are completely different between these two pens. And of course, the Zen has the smallest nib of any of my Deltas, but it still writes phenomenally. And Mike Massiamo has done a nice left oblique grind on it. But the section is just substantially different between the two. This one, the Zen, I can write with for hours and days. This one, you get tired after a little bit because that section is a little bit big. Most of our hands were originally writing with pencils, which are very thin, and then maybe a Bic pen or another ballpoint. So we're used to grabbing something that's a little bit less in diameter. So the bigger diameters have their advantages, but it's more of a, to me, aesthetics than it is a functionality. What I like about YouTube videos about fountain pens is I watched a Mike Matheson review of shimmering gold ink, and he was using a Unica from a few years ago that was made out of the same resin as Hell's Bells, that nice deep red resin. So I picked up my Unica and compared it to the tortoise in the Federico, and there is similarities. I wouldn't say it's the exact match, but it certainly has more in common with this resin than it has with any other resins. So I thought that was an interesting revelation, and something I probably wouldn't have thought about until I saw that video. But, you know, they reuse the resins. They probably have a large stock of resins. They may have purchased them when maybe they weren't as expensive as they are now. So that's nice to see them reuse and make the resins into many forms. I also wanted to show you the eBay auctions that these pens were purchased under. One of the things that Marte Modena used to do is they'd put a high shipping cost on their pens, which I'm assuming might equate to whatever profit they wanted to get out of the pen. In the early days, shipping was $10. It was DHL, and you got it in a few days. The last pen that I bought took a long time to get here, and it originally shipped with a rollerball, and I was a little bit concerned when I got it, but apparently they only had a rollerball and they had to order the fountain pen, and it just goes in and out, so you can convert any of these to rollerball if you have the necessary change in the section. So we'll take a look at the different pricings, and I think these are all great deals, and I'll also show you some of the current auctions. These are now out of primary market where you're buying from a distributor or a supplier or manufacturer. They're now in the secondary market, and people are looking for quite a good price for these pens in the secondary market. So hopefully use anybody out there who's were interested in these pens, pick them up when they were available for a very reasonable price considering the quality of the pen and the manufacturer. Now they're a little bit harder to find, and the pricing has definitely gone up. The three nibs on the Federicos that we're going to write with. This one on the far left is the steel nib, which is in medium. You can see the M there at the bottom. The one in the middle is the Hell's Bells, which is a 14 karat rhodium plated. That's a fine. You can see the difference in the tipping material between the fine and the medium. And then on the far right is the 18 karat nib. As you can see, they do the same stamping material. Everything stays the same. The only one big difference is on the gold nibs. The nib size is marked on the right corner or the right shoulder of the nib. Turn them over, you can see the feeds are pretty much the same on all three. Some ink on the tortoise one. So that's a close-up of some beautiful nibs, and we'll now put them to paper. The steel nib. It's been uncapped for a few minutes, so that hard start is not typical, but You know, it did dry out, but you notice it started up right away. This shares a characteristic with all the Delta pens that I have. And my writing is extremely terrible right now, as it's a wet writer. This is the Dumanis Sepia Brown, which I got into sepia inks for a while, and this one I think is as close as I've found to what I would call sepia. This nib I worked on a little bit. It was one of the few Delta nibs that I needed to do some adjustments on, and it was just basically, I took the nib and feed apart, I opened up the feed channel a little bit, I smoothed the nib, and now it writes great. Not much sound, and again, a consistently wet line. There's a little bit of variation between horizontal and vertical. I mean, it's has a little bit of spring to it, is the word that I'm going to start using instead of flex or soft. So we're going to jump from that to the Hell's Bells, which is the 14 karat fine. And I think you can notice right away that it is a finer line. And as we all know, it is a fairly wet writer. This is KWZ Turquoise, which is a beautiful blue. All my KWZ inks I really enjoy. So this is a pen that again is extremely smooth. Slightly smoother than the steel nib, but not a significant difference than the horizontal and vertical. No pressure, a little bit of pressure. I mean, it's nothing. In fact, if you were blindfolded, you probably would have a difficult time telling the difference between the steel nib and the 14 karat. Now we'll go to the Red Passion, which is the last one and probably the last one I'll ever buy. You might ask if these pens post. Yes, you can post them, and they don't post very deeply, and it makes for a huge pen. And there's no need to post them because they fit fine in the hand without posting. This has that huge section on it. And this is the 18 karat nib, and I got this because I wanted an 18 karat nib, but after I got it, I was not impressed with it. Like I said, the steel nib works great. Again, it's wet. This is Iroshizuku Mojito, which is a beautiful red, which I've had for a while and I really enjoy. It's 3 different types of inks. All of them perform very, very well. There occasionally you'll find an ink that doesn't work in a Delta. I've found that twice and I just stopped using the ink. One was a Noodler's and the other one was a Private Reserve. So it's not consistent with the type of ink. There's just certain inks that don't flow as nicely through the feed. And this also doesn't have any real springiness to it. It's a nice fine point. It writes consistently, which again is a Delta trademark. So hopefully this has been interesting to you. Some eye candy, a pen that is was available relatively recently and now it's not as available as it used to be. So thank you for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. May you have many great writing experiences. Keep on writing, keep on enjoying life and all of its diversity.